Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. Hi, I'm Paul and I'll be your host this evening. And as you can see, I've been joined by someone who has been missing for a while. Got a bit AWOL, had a bit of time off, and has obviously got older because he's gone for the flat cap this evening. Good evening, Mr. Harris. How are you doing?
Yeah, good evening, Paul, and good evening to everybody on NZ Sports Radio. Should I say the DrivingMaul? But it's a privilege and a pleasure to be back on the show. Yeah, had an off season, just like the players.
And I'll be honest, look, I kept going, but I really wasn't into it. It was getting a bit, and it wasn't really until this weekend where I really felt like the years really started, and I suddenly got excited again this weekend. But before that, I'll be honest, it wasn't really. I was a bit kind of just down on rugby, but the kind of break or the switch off has been really good. Good evening. Nocturnal Rights, who's joining us on YouTube. Don't forget, folks, you can join us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter at 8 p.m. every Monday for the DrivingMaul show. Also, if you can't catch us live, then you can also watch replay videos on those places, or you can catch the podcast. Search for New Zealand Sports Radio on your favourite podcatcher. And I'll say, Stephen, thank you very much. New hat that isn't just maybe, and it's also reversible, so you can put it on the other way around. I don't think there's any difference in pattern this side, but it's an All Blacks bucket hat. Thank you, Stephen. I wanted to stretch it a little bit for my big noggin.
Yeah, Paul, I was going to say interesting. Interesting what you were saying about the rugby season starting, and it just kind of felt that way on Friday night. Now I'm going in and out, so I don't know if you're losing me from time to time, but yeah, Friday night just felt like the beginning of a rugby. It was a little bit like a date night, wasn't it? Obviously catching up with yourself for that Moana Pacifica Chiefs game.
Date night, just because someone put it was a bad blind date doesn't mean it was a date night. But there you go. Yes. So so we were both out at Moana Pacifica on Friday for their first ever game. They billed it as, but they do seem to be forgetting about that game they played 2 years ago now, I think it is, against the New Zealand Maori. That doesn't seem to be registering as about a year and a half ago as their first game, but for some reason they're calling this their first game. But this is the first game at Mount Smart and the first game in this sort of guise, I guess. From this one. So we'll talk about that game. We'll talk about the other Super Rugby pre-season games as well, because there's been a number of sides in action this weekend. We'll also have a chat about the Six Nations as well. But one little piece of sort of news, that's key news came through. Dalton Papali'i has been named as the Blues captain. And you've got your Blues jersey on there, Stephen. So are you happy with Dawson being named the captain of the Blues?
Well, firstly, I've got to say it's a little bit of a surprise, because if you can recall last year when Patrick Tuipulotu was injured for a period of time, Tom Robinson took over as a skipper. So I immediately thought he would be the natural successor. But on saying that, probably a good selection at the end of the day. I suppose you want somebody who's going to be on the field playing a goodly number of minutes for the team, and he probably suits the bill, and I would imagine he'll probably be one of the first players picked, Paul.
Tom Robinson, it was great to see him back on the pitch this weekend after his concussion issues last year, but looks like he might have picked up a sort of hamstring injury during that. To me, he's not a guaranteed starter for the Blues, with Ikiri Iwani obviously also battling out that 6 jersey and Hoskins Sotutu as well in that kind of 6-8 mix. So I guess from that point of view, I agree. Knox might sound like Thompson might not be the first pick for the Blues. It'd be great for Tom Robinson just to have a season, a season where he just doesn't get injured, really, because he was on the edge of All Blacks selection a couple of years ago before he did his knee at the time.
Yeah, we'll probably get to injuries and Tom Robinson in a moment, because unfortunately he has picked up another injury, but we'll get to that when we cover the Blues Hurricanes game off. I suppose we were having an interesting conversation on Friday evening about Josh Ioane, how he's really good at coming in and closing a game off. I think what Tom Robinson brings is a lot of energy off the bench. And if you probably look at the mix of the Blues forward pack, I don't know if he's actually going to suit their mix or their starting mix, shall I say, because obviously with Papa Ali there, you would imagine Akira Ioane, Hoskins Satutu, that probably looks like it, more like your likely starting loose forward trio. And then I would imagine looking at your two locks, maybe Goodhue and Romano, and maybe also somebody like Sam Derry off the bench, and that's where Tom Robinson would be handy, as well as an option lock loose forward off the bench. Means that you can carry another flyer on the bench as well, Paul. So maybe he doesn't suit the actual starting mix that the Blues coaches want.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure about the balance in that back row. If you look at a lot of the other teams and what they've been doing, down in the Hurricanes have been playing a couple of sevens, really, haven't they? Plus a six when you've got Karifi and Ardi on the pitch. The weekend, England played 2 sevens effectively. And in some ways, if you're playing the Hoskins Satutu and Akira Ioane, not only are you playing 2 kind of 6/8s, but you're carrying 2 big ball carrying guys, not guys necessarily that you think are good in the line out, for example. A bit big for being a bit sort of chunky to be being lifted. I'm a fan of Akira Ioane and Hoskins Satutu. I'm not necessarily a fan of both of them playing in the same back row, the balance that brings. But on the plus side, it does mean you can do that 1-2 punch where one carries in and the next one carries in as well. So we'll see about that one. As Dr. writes, this is not ideal in terms of hard yakka for the Blues. And look, if Akira Ioane wants to be the All Blacks number 6, then he's going to have to do the hard yakka and be able to put in that work rate. So from that point, it's more the balance of, do you have the jackler, the person who's putting in the 15 tackles, and then the ball carrier. I'm not sure that you're asking quite a lot of Dalton Bapilihi to be out tackler and jackler, or you're looking at it from somewhere else other than the back row, which is that. So I'm not sure what the balance from that point of view.
Yeah, interesting. I suppose, Paul, while we actually, I know we probably shouldn't discuss the Blues, but maybe it segues nicely into their trial game that they played yesterday. But the loose forward trio that they started with yesterday was Cameron Suafua, Anton Signa, and they had Tane Plumtree running around at number 8, and he actually did a really, really good job in that number 8. So it's interesting that they have got, what it shows is they've got plenty of depth in that loose forward trio. But I like the fact that you can have a big, tall ball winner at the back of the line out, Paul, because it's such a good option to have. I just think maybe with Satutu, Akira, and Dalton, I'm not too sure if you've got those same options available.
Yeah, no, exactly. I agree. So it'll be interesting. I mean, Adrian Choate, another player that you haven't named, is also in the Blues squad. Obviously, Dalton Bapilihi wasn't available at the weekend because of All Blacks keeps him out until the first round of the Super Rugby. So that's why he wasn't starting, folks. But you say it's difficult to read from the lineups as to what coaches are thinking in his preseason games. To be honest with you, there's obviously a lot of All Blacks to come back, and are they looking at specific combinations, or are they just trying to get everyone game time? And our post-match interviews that we did at Moana Pacifica versus the Chiefs, that's one of the points, or one of the things that Clayton McMillan talks about, was how difficult it can be trying to get all the people enough game time in these preseason games. And tellingly, their game was 3/3 of 30 minutes, giving them 10 more minutes of rugby than your traditional 2 halves of 40. So obviously that gives players a bit more time on the pitch on that one. So So yes, it'll be interesting to see how they all go with that one. So I guess we can sort of get into the games a little bit. So first up was the Highlanders versus the Crusaders. Highlanders winning 20-19 in that one. Don't really know where you could watch it from. It was 17-7 at half time. So I've not seen this one. I've just basically seen the score. I don't think it was streamed or available. A 72nd minute penalty was all the Highlanders scored in that second half, and that won them the game. Tries coming from Dawai, Coltman there for the Highlanders, and from the Crusaders, McLeod, the penalty try, and Hickey scoring their ones. So there you go. That's I've seen a sort of headline that raises saying that he's basically learned something from that as to what the Crusaders need to work on. But I don't know. Have you seen anything else from that game?
Well, listen, apart from walking away with it's the Farmlands Trophy that they play for down there, so the Highlanders will walk away with some sort of silverware in 2022. No, we can't really get much out of it, Paul. It's like, and we'll get on to the Auckland, with the Blues Canes game as well. Not much you can really get out of this game. I think sometimes you'll often in these preseason games you'll see a lot of physical content, but you'll also see a lot of errors as well in these games.
Yeah, Fitu Paia apparently has picked up an injury from this one. Nocturnal Right says, which is a shame. He's had a string of injuries, hasn't he, over the last couple of seasons? So it's a shame for him, really, and because he just moved down to the Highlanders, hasn't he, from the Crusaders? I think from memory, right?
Yeah, it's
there. So yes, a real shame for him, and especially with, and he didn't play last year, especially with those two, that sort of 12-13 jersey at the Highlanders really is up for grabs this year. When you got, Scott Gregory had some decent games in that 13 jersey, as Thomas Manga Jensen also did pretty well, but Sio Tompkinson, I don't think, has tied down one of those jerseys. So neither Punavai either. So I think, it's a real shame for him to be injured at the beginning of the season, as I think those jerseys really are up for grabs.
Yeah, you're right, Paul. Nobody's really grasped that opportunity in those 12 and 13 channels. I remember last year with the injuries, they sort of stumbled upon Michael Collins, who's now gone overseas, and of course Scott Gregory, and they did an adequate job. Other way around, actually, Gregory played 12. Collins played 13, but is Gregory the answer after a poor season with the Taniwha 2021? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I see somebody like Thomas Manga Jensen, really big, robust type of player. So it's definitely caused concern for the Highlanders coaching staff.
Yep. So we'll see how that all pans out. Now their game against Moana Pacifica next weekend has been cancelled, but then I saw something in stuff referencing that game, referencing Moana Pacifica, saying how they'd have to sort of learn from this weekend and go better next weekend against the Highlanders. So I don't know if it's back on because all the teams are heading down to Queenstown and the bubbles are there, or whether it's off, or whether it's still cancelled. Just have to wait and see. Now we were at the Moana Pacifica versus the Chiefs. Moana Pacifica. This was also on Sky and Prime as well, so even on free to air TV. So Moana Pacifica scored just one try, and Chiefs winning that one 7-61 at Mount Smart with that one. I think that was kind of a lot of talk in the questions afterwards were about how that was a bit of a wake up call for Moana Pacifica and for the players, a bit of reality check for the fans as well, Stephen.
Yeah, I think so, but it kind of was nothing that we always knew what could possibly happen. Just remembering this franchise weren't granted a license till July 2021, which pretty much gave them 4 months to select a team, which included non-contracted Pacific Island New Zealand players, and basically anybody, just the wrong time of the year to be signing players as well. Anybody who was half decent would have probably already signed a contract overseas. So they were behind the 8 ball. But I think the most telling comment that came out of the weekend actually came from Sir Brian Williams, when he basically addressed the players at the end of the game and said to them, listen, you're playing catch up here. You're 26 years behind the Chiefs. Well, not just the Chiefs, but you're 26 years behind any professional rugby team that has played Super Rugby. So there's a little bit of catching up to do, and boy, they will have to learn really, really fast. And I'm pretty sure, as we both saw, there's plenty of areas for them to work on, and definitely the first area is up front.
Yeah, and they did say that one of the props had actually joined the camp that day or the day before, so hence. And that sort of situation was in there. Now, one of the things that I think I also took from this was that I think a lot of us look at these teams, the existing Super Rugby teams, think, oh, look, they're these professional organisations who've got lots of resources, etc., etc. Now, when you get there, you realise that actually there's probably about 10 backroom staff on the admin side that have to cover all the business management, all the ticket sales, all the media, all the sponsorship, all of that kind of stuff. They are not big organizations, they're small organizations. But after 26 years, you've kind of got yourself embedded and got some processes in place. With Moana Pacifica, they're still relying, it feels like they're still relying a lot on people just donating their time and volunteering for it. So, for example, I know that there were about 3 people who we've been kind of dealing with as part of their media kind of group. Now, that's bigger than most teams. Most teams have 1 person to do that. But I'm pretty sure, and I definitely know 2 of them, and I think the other person also have all got full-time jobs separate to Moana Pacifica. And this is not their full-time gig, whereas and one of those was saying how she was taking to head down to Queenstown. That obviously means they're taking basically vacation to go and be in the bubble and to manage that. So look, it's not only have they got a lot to learn on the pitch with a whole bunch of those players without Super Rugby experience, but they've also got a lot to set up off the pitch, so that they and grow as an organisation. This is no slight on them. It is just a fact that when you have a brand new organisation like this, that, let's be honest, during these COVID times, won't be flush with cash excessively to throw around to just sort these issues out. A lot of it has been done on goodwill, because, as you say, Brian Williams, etc., have been trying to get this off the ground for over 2 decades, and there's a lot of people who want this to succeed, and I'm one of them. But we just need to have our expectations set properly. That they've got a long way to go, both on and off the pitch, to get themselves in a situation that basically creates an environment that can produce a winning team.
Interesting point was interesting point of view. I was talking to Daniel Bowden on Saturday. I was privileged enough to be in the bubble that I was able to attend the game between the North Harbour development squad, or the North Harbour Knights, versus the New Zealand Barbarians. There's a tournament coming up over the next month, and I'll explain it towards the end of the program. But we were talking about how the Moana Pacifica picked up their license in July last year, and then had to run around buying players. And I know, speaking to, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but the discussion piece was more about maybe they should have basically put things into place, gave themselves another year, and joined the competition in 2023, Paul, as opposed to joining hurriedly in 2022, trying to race around, sign a whole lot of players, but just maybe put a little bit more foundation in place.
Well, I think we can lay the blame of that one at more at New Zealand Rugby and Rugby Australia's door, basically, as to how long they took. I mean, we kind of knew in was it November 2020-ish that we were going to be getting to this sort of stage, but it took them until May or June, whatever it was, June, July, for them to actually get their license. They can actually start signing players. That process just took way too long. Now I don't know kind of why or where or what, we were involved in that, but that's if they got that in sort of January, February, sure they would have still been a bit late to the game of signing players, but there would have been some players who could and would have signed that haven't been able to for this time. So it's whilst I'm not sure I would want them to wait until 2024. I think they just should have got the contract, been given the contract earlier, if that makes sense. But either way, you're right. If you look at how the Hankey Raris put themselves together, they had pretty much a 2-year run in to their first season, whereas the Sunwolves ended up having a 6-month run in, and we saw the difference in their performances. Also, the Sunwolves basically rebuilt themselves about 4 times in that thing. So I guess the situation, and also if you look at something like the Force, I think you'll see a different Force team this year than you did last year. The Force last year only had about a month's notice heading into Super Rugby AU that they were actually going to take part. And so again, they were scrambling around for players. And we saw their results. This year, they've beaten the Reds 33-42 in their pre-season warm-up. And they've actually got a lot more Australian players and young players in there. That is a team that you can see they're building a nucleus for a team for the next 5 years. You can see what they're doing. You couldn't see what they were doing last year. Why? Well, they only had 4 weeks to put it together. So it's a very different situation when you have time. I think we'll see, if you look at the Force, you're probably looking at what Moana Pacifica will be like in 12 months' time.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point you make about the Western Force. I also read a few people on the social network sort of comparing them with the New Zealand Warriors, or back then they were called the Auckland Warriors. But even with the Auckland Warriors, they joined the NRL in 1995, but that was announced in 1992. So they had their license to join the NRL. They had 30 odd months to piece not only a competitive team together, but also buy in 2 or 3 marquee players. Just a couple of names off the top of my head. Dennis Betts from England. I think there was Greg Alexander, Australian scrum half standoff. And I think there was also Dean Bell, admittedly coming towards the end of his career, but a very experienced rugby league player. So you do need that extra time.
Absolutely. So interesting questions. How long do these teams have Super Rugby licenses for this time? Good question. I don't know, actually, as to how long this setup is. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that all. I can't remember how long it is for. Sorry, Simon, I can't help you on that one. The Nocturnal Rights mentioned something. I think that bus trip to Dunedin from Queenstown for super teams is a little long for a day trip. Players might feel jaded performing under the roof. Now, this is something that got asked. A bit of a question got asked during the post-match with Clayton McMillan. So let's just quick listen to a snippet from Clayton McMillan's interview about moving down to Queenstown and how the Chiefs are looking at it and approaching it.
Challenges you. There's been much chatter amongst the group about going to relocate down there and what it's going to mean.
Oh, we've spoken a lot about it. Everybody would prefer to be living in a world where we had crowds and we were able to play at home in front of our loyal fans. But unfortunately, that's not how the world rolls at the moment. And you just got to be adaptable, and you got to move you just got to do what's necessary to get rugby played. And so, most of our guys are excited about the opportunity. A lot of them have talked about tours to South Africa in years gone by when you get away early, and it's a great bonding opportunity, and that can potentially set you up for the rest of the season. So that's our sort of mindset.
Unmute Paul, it'll all be good. That was a bit quiet, folks. I'm sorry about that, but the interview there with Clayton, unfortunately, we had to keep distance in that one. Don't worry, Stephen, your sound is absolutely fine on this. But what he's basically saying there is using it as a bonding experience, a bit like tours going to South Africa. He was also asked after that about who would they be fighting for the back seat and the coach. He says, no, I think there'll be lots of Netflix watching and sleeping Yes, the move from Invercargill to Dunedin, I think it's added an hour each way to the coach trip. That Nocturnal Rights is asking about that one. Look, I think it's going to come down to TV, and that Sky have got things set up and people in place in Dunedin. It's much easier for them to do that for that one. So it's a good way of looking at it from Clayton, not complaining about it, and I think that's what they've got to have in their mindset, is that it is what it is, and that they've got to play. They've got to do what they can to play rugby.
I was going to say, Paul, I don't disagree with you. Like I say, you look to some of the other sports, professional sports in New Zealand that play out of Australia, whether it be the Phoenix, the Warriors, man, you talk about doing it tough. They have to do it in another country. I think, unfortunately, dare I say it, I think these rugby players just got to get on with it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the Chiefs, one of the Crusaders mentioned that in an interview. That look, it's not so bad for, relatively speaking, it's not bad for us compared to what other people are having to do. If you want to listen to that whole interview with Clayton, then become a supporter of New Zealand Sport Radio over at patreon.com/Enter Sport Radio. The full interviews with Clayton McMillan, Sekope Kepu, and Cristiano Leofano are available to supporters only via the Acast app. Pardon me. When Patreon starts hosting video, then I'll be putting the videos on there as well. Not so much. I'm predicting a few salacious bubble-busting stories from Queenstown. Yeah, look, let's be honest. The Highlanders, in particular, have had some fun and games stories coming out of Queenstown recently, haven't they, over the last couple of years? But the Chiefs put out a meme or meme, or however you're supposed to say it, so showing the boys sitting on a jet boat going, this is what people think Queenstown's going to be like, and then showing a picture of the boys training and going, this is what Queenstown is going to be like. I don't think they're going to be allowed out. Let's be honest, they're going to have to stay in their hotels. There won't be pub trips into Queenstown itself. It'll just be staying in. It'll be going to lots of golf resorts and that kind of thing. One of the things I wanted to get out of the evening with or the trip up to watch the Moana game was to get to talk to them about their culture. Now, we do talk about culture a lot in rugby, but I think one of the things I noticed during the Moana Pacifica warm up was they all circled up and had a sing and a clap as part of it, which I don't know the significance of it, but the Moana Pacifica media lady's like, yeah, that's just what we do. And it's kind of like, okay, that's cool, but it's not what we. It's not how. It's not something that I expected. And I also asked Christian Leofano about how he thought about the culture of it. So let's have a listen to that. Sorry if it's quiet again, folks. I might want to turn your volume up for this a little bit.
It's a new country for you. It's a new team. It's a new type of team. That you probably haven't been with a team with this much culture in it. How are you finding just that whole experience of all those new cultural challenges?
Man, we love it. We love it, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I feel like I'm home, or I am home. Born here in New Zealand, in Auckland, so it's still like bringing my Aussie flavour in. The boys love hearing "G'day, mate" in the morning. But loving connecting back to my heritage and all the different cultures and understanding a lot about it. We've got a lot of passion in the group about their heritage and what we're trying to carry on. So this has been really special. Every day is really special. Hearing the singing in the background now, it just fills me with a lot of love and joy, man, to be involved in something really, really unique. We do things a little bit different, and we're loving it, loving being that way.
So so there's a lot of talk about culture, etc. in rugby, but I do think that this team is very different from the other Super Rugby teams here in New Zealand. And whilst they might say, "Oh yeah, but the Crusaders were very different to the Blues," it's like yes and no. At the end of the day, I think it's quite a lot more similarities than there are with this Moana Pacifica team. So, and you could hear that singing in the background. That was from the Moana Pacifica changing room. Now they've lost the game by over 50 points. By over 50 points. and they're having a sing. The only time you'll normally hear teams singing is when they've won, and it's not and it's a very shouty, bangy singing. So yeah, I think it's. I really do think I really got to feel that there was a different culture, it was a different team, a different type of team singing.
Yeah, Paul, I think I think I can use an analogy, probably a little bit like the New Zealand Māori team, where I think there'll be a real sense of belonging and being, and probably learning a little bit more about themselves. I would imagine just through Waiata, that song, they will go. A lot of these guys will go back to their own cultures and own beliefs and upbringings, because when you do sometimes go into dare I say a more European world, part of that culture you do leave a little bit behind, and it's only really when you come together with your own people that you sort of find that culture again. And it was kind of refreshing. And you're dead right. These guys, they weren't too down. They looked like they were having a bit of fun. And that culture side of it might be the one thing that maybe, despite if they are on the back end of some bad score lines, that actually keeps them together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was listening to the What a Lad podcast, and they had a chat with I've gone the Chiefs player who's gone over to the Tasmanian Chiefs player who's gone over to play in the island for Leinster.
James Lowe.
James Lowe, thank you. I was trying to remember his first name. And one of the things he was mentioning was when he went into the Maori All Blacks, he's like, it's the first time I was really properly exposed to that culture. So he hadn't been brought up in a Maori culture. So as you say, I think that's a very important team, not just for what it does on the pitch, for what it does off the pitch as well. And one of the things that talking about this Chiefs team, one of the things that clicked with me when I was talking to Alex when I asked Alex Nankivell a question in the pre-game when Chiefs side announcement. I said, "Hey, look, you're going to play outside Josh Ioane in the second half. What does it feel? What's he been like?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I've got to play with him in the Maori All Blacks." I was like, yes. Why has so I don't think it's a big gamble by Clayton McMillan bringing Josh Ioane to the Chiefs, because he's already managed him at the Maori All Blacks level. He knows who the kid is, and so therefore that's what I think one of the reasons that he's actually brought they've brought him in, and there won't be the same getting to know each other that you might have between some players and coaches. So yes, I think that's why I think Josh has got this opportunity at the Chiefs.
Oh, I agree, Paul, and I think he'll learn a lot about once. I think this will also take him back to his culture as well. Well, Paul, I don't we keep using that word, but I think he'll find himself again. And boy, what we saw on Friday night was just a little. If that's a little cameo of what's to come in 2022, boy, hang on to your hats, shall we say? He looks like he's set for a very, very good season, and boy, not only with his general play, Gatland, who started the first part of that game, controlled it reasonably well on the back of a very good pack, but once Ioane came on, boy, he just gives you another level, doesn't he? That running game, and of course the goal kicking is the icing on the cake.
Absolutely. The Chiefs were playing a very narrow game. They were playing 10, 11-man rugby. They really weren't going very wide in the first 45 minutes. Now, sure, you bring Josh Ioane on. It's not just, and there was a whole bunch of other changes at the same time. It wasn't just replacing. It's not all at Gatland's feet. And obviously the opposition are tiring as well. So there's more space. I do think that's what do you say, that he's playing very well. He opens up the team. And one of the things we talked about was, will Josh Ioane be the starting 10? Well, it depends what Clayton wants to do with that team. Does he want to try and win the game in the first half? In which case, maybe yes. If he's happy to play Gatland and play a tight first half and then use Josh Ioane when the game opens up in the second half, you might see Josh in that 22 jersey, not because Gatland's seen as the better 10, but because the style of play and how they want their play to change during a game, which might be one of the things. So, it'll be interesting to see how how that all pans out. And yeah, Simon says, yeah, they had a very American football interchange in that match. Yeah. The Moana Pacifica named 3 teams for each period, whereas Clayton named 2 teams for the first and second halves of the game. Now, that meant on 45 minutes, halfway through the second period, the entire team ran off the pitch and a new team ran on. Yes, it was very American side.
Yeah.
So,
Paul, I
anything
was going to say, you could arguably say, looking at that first 15 that started on the paddock, is very much a B look. They rolled out a couple of their injury cover players, and Sam McNamara and Liam Halameems, and I must put in a plug for you, Paul. We've got those interviews on NZ Sport Radio as well, and that's pretty much me wearing my Northern cap. Just wanted to get a view of guys who have been called into this Chief squad. But you know, you also saw a lot of younger players like George Dyer, who came off the bench so impressive in the 2021 NPC, but a player that I'd never heard of was Lalomelo at centre, and him and Rameka Pohepi were very strong in the midfield. But I've got to say, you put your little asterisks up and say that was behind a very dominant pack as well, where if you kind of looked at the other side of the ledger, we know what very good players Inari and McClutchy are as a combination, but Inari got put under a lot of pressure, and a lot of his passing was very pressure orientated, and it just seemed to flow through the rest of the back line.
yeah, absolutely. I don't think he had I don't think Lincoln McClutchy had the best game, to be honest. But then again, I say a lot of those players were put under pressure, and he's not played at this level before. A big thank you to Northern Rugby, who have shared one of those interviews, and that's it's taking off on Facebook at the moment. So yes, do check out those interviews that Stephen did on the New Zealand Sport Radio Facebook page. And I say big thank you to Northland, who have got behind us on that one. Moving on then, 2 other Super Rugby games. The Reds versus Western Force. Reds lost that one 33-42. As Simon Hughes said in the live chat earlier, that game was geo-blocked, so we've not seen it. So I've not really got anything to say about that game, apart from it's a pre-season game, folks. So I'm not sure there's that much we can actually read into the game, to be honest. But good to see the Force get that win. It's at least it sets them up in the sort of the right way heading into the season. The Blues versus the Hurricanes, mind you, it took a lot of badgering, I'll be honest, but eventually the Blues and the Hurricanes actually did stream this game on YouTube, so I did watch this one. Some how do I put this? Interesting commentary. If we're going to be fair,
bit of a tough one for veteran commentator Ken Laban. I suppose the first thing is we've got to remember he's probably working off one camera. It wasn't your normal coverage that you get via rugby when they've got maybe three or four cameras at the ground. They were using one camera which had a bit of a wide lens as well. That's the first thing I've basically got to say, but I must admit I don't think even he realised they'd gone to golden hold these scrums for the last 15 minutes of that game, Paul, and I think that was due to the Blues losing a couple of their props going down with injuries.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, fine. Look, Ken got some names wrong during the game as well. Now, to be fair, I think for the stream for this game, they had 2 cameras. They had a wide-angle lens and they had one actually follow play. So I was actually quite impressed with actually the camera work of this game. Sure, the camera wasn't on halfway, which made it a bit strange because it was on the 10-meter line. So you're kind of thinking, oh, they're playing. Oh, hang on, no, they're not. So you had to think about and watch the lines as to where the play was. But hey, at least it's. So I thought that was quite good. But him saying that Super Rugby kicks off next weekend. No, we're still 2 weekends away. Come on, mate. There were a couple of jokes about had he had a couple of drinks, maybe, or liquid lunch beforehand. But no, I'm pretty sure he didn't. He's a professional guy. But yeah, it's not his best work, to be honest. But good to have a commentator. I mean, again, hats off to the Blues and the Hurricanes. They've got a professional commentator in, a name that fans will log onto the stream and they'll recognise the voice. It'll make them feel comfortable. it'll make them feel like they're actually getting told the real thing on there. So yeah, good to have commentary, which was good. As Nocturnal Right says, very wet game. Absolutely, it was. It was awful, and I'm so glad I was not able to go, to be honest, because that would have been a horrible game to be at. And because of that, there's not much you can learn from this game because of the conditions. Both. Go on, Sim.
I was gonna say just the initial impressions from me, especially from the first half. My takeaways were, I thought the Hurricanes played the field position. They managed the game way better and played a lot of the game in the Blues half, hence creating a lot of a lot of pressure. And of course, they deserved a good lead. And it looked like they were going to actually run away with it, and that was mainly through their forwards. And they were actually creating good ruck ball. And unlike the Blues, I thought the Blues breakdown work, and admittedly, first game of the season, but I think that highlighted that it needs a lot of work. Their breakdown areas, I can probably about 8 occasions where they either got penalised or they actually lost the ball in possession. So they really couldn't get anything going. But of course, they did provide the highlight of the match.
That's it. There was some rugby played, but Ken's comment of they're playing like it's a sunny day even though it's wet. No, they weren't. And the Blues, as you say, second half played much better. And you've got to say that and part of that's going to be down to which squads were on there. Because I mean, one of our friends in our rugby chat group that we have was like, "Hang on, how many fans have they allowed in there?" It's like, no, there are no fans there. Those are all squad members. It's like, what? They've got that many players? Yes, there are that many players there. So yeah, it looked like there was a small crowd, but in reality, it was all players or other kind of members of staff, because they all went on the pitch during half time. So yeah, there was it was crazy. It's a crazy number of changes. The fact that the team's going to keep any kind of structure when they're changing entire teams it's going to all get a bit messy. So great finish for the Blues. When you look at their squad, the only question mark around any of the positions really is 12, and with RTS coming and putting that jumper on, you've got to say, look, that they've got a really good squad. He had an okay run out at 12. As I say, not the right conditions for him. Not so. I think we'll reserve judgment for another day. But look, this is a Blues squad that's I guess Locks and 12 are the two question marks around this squad, and they've tried to fill that as best they can with RTS and also with Romano coming in at in the Locks, it's a good hit out for them. They'll be happy that they came back to beat the Hurricanes, and I say not much more we can take from that one, apart from perhaps a couple of injuries.
That's a downside for the Blues. Of course, Tom Robinson rolling an ankle. Don't know how bad that is. So you never know if it's one of those high grade sprains. That could be anything up to 6 to 8 weeks. And of course, the open side flanker Anton Segner coming off with a knee injury. Obviously, like the Friday night's game, the Chiefs Moana Pacifica game, the Chiefs who rolled out some young players. It was great to see the Blues and the Hurricanes doing the same thing. Really impressed with some of those young players. Josh Fusitua, who's the younger brother of former Warrior David Fusitua. This is a highly rated prop, and boy, he looked really good. Initially, he struggled at scrum time, but that scrum actually got better, and I thought he was very good. But I was also very impressed. Don't often see Tane Plumtree playing in that number 8 jersey, Paul. Usually a 6 or a lock position. I thought he was very impressive, and of course, along with in fact, all 3 number 8s I thought played well. I thought Devin Flanders was very good for the Hurricanes, and I also saw Braden Yosse, who came on in the second half, was very good. So all 3 number 8s were consistently good throughout this game. And I always get question marks in and around Sam Derry as well, Paul. But he looks like he's bulked up a little bit and created a nice little run right at the end and an offload to AJ Lamb, who got a second try to wrap the game up. And I thought he was solid as well. But yeah, good comeback from the Blues. But hey, there's no points on these games.
There aren't, I guess, any other problem for the Blues is that we did go to, as you say, uncontested scrums or golden ollie scrums. So they've lost a couple of props during this game. Now, the Blues have got 4 All Blacks props that are unavailable. So obviously they come back into the reckoning once Super Rugby starts. But I think one of the things that Clayton's been talking about on a number of calls I've been on is that there is going to be a lot of, there's going to be, teams are going to be impacted by COVID at some point during this season. And they're going to lose players. The contract of 38 is not enough to get you through this season. Your next group of players, although those that they've had in, are going to be very, very important. Which hence why, as you talked about there, they've all been a lot of them have been run out during these games. So it is it's been very important to get those guys to get some game time, get them exposure at this level. And I think we're going to see a lot of those players flown down to Queenstown, well, depending on how long they're down in Queenstown for. Initially, only the first three rounds, obviously, but we'll have to see. That'll depend on how things are going in the country. And we're not going to go down that route, folks. We'll just let what'll be will be. So, any final thoughts on Super Rugby before we have a quick chat about Six Nations?
No, like you, just finally, just on injuries, and I think it's probably, you'll find that a lot of the franchise will be running sort of initial tournaments, and I know the Blues are running an under-20s Blues Cup, but it actually started with a game on Saturday between the New Zealand Barbarians, pretty much a team that was made up of a lot of very good Auckland club players, academy players. Auckland are not putting a team in this competition because most of the players are going to be involved in the Blues under-20 setup. North Harbour putting their, what they call their Knights team, which is their development team, in this competition, but they also got a few fringe Blues guys running around as well. So this tournament will be happening for the next 2 weeks at Albany Stadium. First games will kick off around about 11 a.m. on the outer ground, and this Saturday and next Sunday. So there'll be two games played. I think the first game is going to be North. I think North Harbour are playing the Blues 20s, and Northland are playing the New Zealand Barbarians, and then the following week vice versa. And for the final week on the 24th, they go up to Whangarei and the venue to be confirmed. But you'll find if there's any injuries, well, you've got some guys that are running around that have had game time. So I would suggest around the country you'll probably have some similar competitions running, as they did. Remember last year, I think you had Bay of Plenty, Taranaki, Waikato all playing in pre-season games.
Yeah, they were. And I think what you're finding, folks, is that remember that there was that review about what shape should rugby take. I think it was, I can't remember what the name of the review was just before COVID. And one of the outcomes of that was the report wasn't released, but one of the rumours that came out of it that was leaked was that essentially we'd end up with basically academies for the 5 Super Rugby franchises rather than having the provinces being in charge of developing players. Now, what I think you're getting is this kind of hybrid situation where look, the Super Rugby franchises are working better with the provinces. Clearly, down in the Crusaders world, they've always worked really, really well. But you're looking at teams like the Blues and the Chiefs getting much better at working with their provinces around those development pathways, because it's really important for that Super Rugby squad and bringing players in either over years or as injury replacements. So yeah, we are seeing that improvement, which is great to see. Moving on then to the Six Nations, we had the opening round of the Six Nations. I guess this was part of also why it felt like the beginning of the rugby year for me as well. First up at kind of 3:30 a.m. On Sunday morning, I got up for Ireland against Wales, 29-7, the end result in that one. But Ireland, in that first half, dominated it massively and really should have won the game in that first half. But it finished at half time at 10-0. They really hadn't put the points on the board that their possession really and territory really should have deserved. And it wasn't till around till the yellow card really, and around the sort of 50-minute mark that they really put the game to bed with that one. So good performance, good showing by Ireland, but not putting the points on the board that their play really deserved.
Yeah, poor result and scoreline, not a surprise for me. I think Ireland on a day, if they had a little bit more, if they were a little bit more ruthless, could have easily stuck 50 points on Wales, to be brutally honest. I look through these two lineups and I look through this Welsh side, and it just looks looks a little underwhelming at the moment, I've got to say, which is interesting in a way, because you look at their back three alone, and Rhys Zammit, Johnny McNichol, and Liam Williams. Man, they've got some X factor out wide, but it's just not happening for the men in red at the minute.
No, look, they had something like 8 players out injured for this game. They had a lot of injuries coming into this game. People like Alwyn Jones, Justin Tipperick, Josh Navidi. So as you can tell, I'm naming forwards here. And as you say, George North also, who would be their first choice 13 as well, playing Josh Adams in at 13, his first time at this level, playing in the centres. Fantastic try-scoring winger, not really, but not a centre. He's taken a lot of blame, a lot of flack for this one. People saying he should never play there again, which I think is a tad harsh, to be honest with you. But I don't think he made that many mistakes, and I think it was speed of ball at the breakdown that was the difference between these two sides. And you got to say that's the forward's job. That's not the 13 jersey's job.
Oh, Paul, and Ireland, when they get their backline moves right, boy, they're a slick side to watch. They are very, very good on. They are very, very good on the eye, and that can probably be never more demonstrated by the last try that they scored, or the try that Gary Ringrose scored. He could have fed the winger, and the winger could have scored, but good enough to finish the job himself. And no, they, like I say, on a given day, they could have stuck 50 on this Welsh side. Unfortunately for Wales leadership, I suspect there's a real big part of the side and getting up for games, and Alan Wynne-Jones is just such a huge loss for the Welsh.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of their more experience. Well, I think they had like 5 or 6 British Irish lines out, so a lot of leadership missing from this Welsh team, and it's going to be a tough Six Nations for them, I think, going forwards. We follow that one up by Scotland versus England. Mac Hansen got man of the match. Somebody who couldn't get game time for the Brumbies is suddenly man of the match in his first ever international for Ireland, with Cork parentage. Wow, there's a bit of talent that's gone missing that the Aussies have missed out on. He had a cracker, didn't he?
Yeah, isn't it? It's similar to a James Lowe story, isn't it? Not wanted to. I'm saying that James Lowe could make the Chiefs when he was running around at home, yes. But gee, that's some story. If you couldn't make a super franchise and then all of a sudden you're running around playing international rugby, good on him.
Exactly. And I must say, I just, the combination of James Lowe and DMAC, I just love them at the Chiefs. What they could have done at international rugby would have been fantastic. But anyway, it is what it is. Moving on then. Scotland versus England. Now, England were dominant in the first half, but couldn't put points on the board. Scotland got the ball, bang, they score a try. It doesn't matter what all the other stats say. If you don't score, it's points that matter, not territory and possession. We saw that in this game. But England came back into it. To me, they had the game won. And then we had a crossfield kick that put Luke Cowan-Dickie totally out of his comfort zone. The hooker out on the wing, jumping against the winger, and he bats the ball out. And you're like, wow, oh wow, penalty try, yellow card, and in that moment, the game is gone. Boy, oh boy, that was a bit of a silly move by him.
Yeah, it wasn't the best, and usually, how I feel about yellow and red cards and penalty tries, but I couldn't argue with that one. It took my mind back to the All Blacks playing France, and I think Sonny Bill Williams had a bit of a brainstorm or brain fart, call it what you like, and decided that he'd bat the ball back over the touchline. And I thought at the time that the following player had no chance of scoring. And even in this situation, if he'd actually gone up and even if he'd knocked it on, worst case scenario, it's probably a knock on, but you can't flick direct the ball into touchline. And from the moment he actually did that, the official basically said, you took the opportunity away from Darcy Graham of scoring a try. So it's under the rules, it's basically a penalty try. And from there on out, that whole crowd at Murrayfield lifted. My God, I couldn't hear myself think when I was watching that game, Paul. And I thought, man, if the Scots don't get home with a man up, England have done something pretty amazing. And the English, to be fair, got themselves back into an attacking position, but just some of their basics, letting them down, Paul.
Yeah, again, like Ireland weren't clinical enough. England, but the Ireland then went on. England weren't clinical when they had their when they were up in the game, when they had their moments, and that's now, one of the things that Luke Cowan-Dickie has said is that he didn't know that was the law. People are like, how does professional play get to this level not knowing the law? Basically because, folks, he is never in that situation. He doesn't have to know those laws. It was very telling listening to a Chris Boyd interview that he did on the Rugby Dungeon with JB, where he talks about one of the things about getting players, when players transition into being coaches, is that the first thing they need to do is actually understand the rest of the game that isn't involved in their bit of the game, and actually understanding the whole game. Players don't actually understand the whole game. They understand their bit very, very well. They don't need to understand the rest of it. And he doesn't understand wing play. He never is in that situation, so he doesn't have to know that law. What he should have done is jump for it, miss the ball, and have it glance off his fingers towards the sideline, not push it towards the sideline. And that's the difference they have. So really, England's got an interesting tactic in that they are playing a fly half, a fullback, and then 4 centre come wings, essentially. Players who aren't. So Joe Marchant is not a specialist wing. Elliot Daly is not a specialist centre. Was playing 13, but he can play wing. So we've got a whole bunch of players there. And what you're going to do is, what that leads to is you've got guys who can be very versatile and on attack can do anything. But it does mean also that a player might not be in the right position defensively to cover. And Ireland did very well to isolate Luke Cowan-Dickie in this situation.
Yeah, Paul, I'm not too sure what Eddie Jones has actually seen in Ian Foster's playbook, but there's a few similarities, I've got to say, floating around at the moment. But when sometimes coaches make decisions during the game, but I've got to ask the question. Listen, I didn't think Marcus Smith was playing too badly, Paul, as well as Ludlow, the blindside flanker. In fact, I actually thought they were 2 of the better ones in the England team, so I found it staggering that they were replaced.
Yeah, it's to my mind, there's a whole bunch of stuff online about how Marcus Smith being replaced was the reason England lost. No, the reason England lost was Luke Cowan-Dickie did something he shouldn't have done. So yeah, you got to say, they won't do anything wrong, but we don't know what their heart rate monitors and GPS systems, all that kind of stuff was telling us on those things. I think we can say there's a lot of substitutions where we scratch our heads and go why, especially with England next up against Italy this coming weekend. So hence they didn't have to make sure anyone was particularly fit for this coming weekend. They're going to win that game comfortably, whatever.
Paul, I was going to say, it would be remiss of us not to say that Scotland got a lot of mileage out of their bench in this game. Guys like Tui Pelotu came on, of course, White came on early and finished off that try from the break. But guys like Skoman and you know they all offered something when they actually came off the bench, and I think they lifted. But gee, on the back of that crowd as well, it just shows you what the influence of a crowd can have at times.
Yeah, look, and White was on for HIA when he scored that try, and obviously he went off and came back on again for Ali Price. So yeah, I think that's one thing we've got to say is Scotland really have built depth now. Previously, you'd look at their bench and go, "Oh, dearie me, they're in trouble when those guys come on." Not anymore. They've really built depth. They are a country on the up, heading the right direction, and a cracking side. Will they win the Six Nations? Well, Ireland are looking very good, and so are France. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, cracking team, Scotland at the moment, and they go away to Wales next weekend, and I can see them winning that one down in Cardiff. I'll be honest. Lobson Wright says, was there any pinging of hookers for boring the head into opposition's neck in the new safety rule? Myself and Boa discussed this safety rule last week on the DrivingMaul show. If you want to actually want to hear about that rule, go back and listen to last week's show. But no, I didn't see any calls around axle loading issues on that one. But I did see, but the hookers were deliberately asked to put their foot forward to try and get rid of that one. Finally, then France versus Italy, 37-10. Look, France got the try bonus point win that we kind of all expected, but Italy, look, I thought they fronted up really, really well in this game, and they had to defend for a lot of the game and do really well in that one. Sure, look, they lost comfortably. They never looked like winning this game, but I thought they put in a real good shift in this one. Now, it doesn't help that France's 9-10 are both just coming back from COVID, and a short of a game or two. But yeah, I think it was whilst comfortable win for France, but I think Italy better than people will probably imagine. I don't know if you've seen this one, Stephen.
No, I can't say I have, Paul. I know a lot of the reports were saying they put in a really good first half, which was good to see. But once again, just conceding that try just on half time, they could have gone into that first half only a couple of points behind the French. But on saying that, you never know with the French. They're a little bit like snakes at the moment, Paul. They can go into that cruise mode and just find another gear when they really require it. But listen, I hope, I know I've been a bit harsh on Italy over the years, but you want these teams to be competitive, and you want this to be a Six Nations of 6 competitive teams, not 5 in a training run. Hopefully they can still put together some solid performances for the rest of this tournament.
Yeah, so next weekend we've got Wales versus Scotland at 3:15 a.m. on Sunday morning. You've got to say Scotland going in to that one as favourites, even though they are away, I would say, from last weekend's results. Then a cracking game. 5:45, folks, set your alarms, because we have France versus Ireland. The two teams that beat the All Blacks, the two teams both coming off the back of try bonus point wins this weekend. That is an absolute cracker, potentially game of the year as far as internationals go already. So that one is an absolute cracker. Talking about games of the year, obviously Ireland touring New Zealand for 3 tests. We'll have to wait for that one, but definitely get to that game, folks. And then finally on Monday morning at 4 a.m, Italy versus England. Yeah, not quite such a good game as the other two, but I think we all know what the result that one's going to be. But boy, oh boy, France versus Ireland, I cannot wait for that game.
Paul, potentially a prelude to maybe a World Cup semi-final or final, that particular game?
No, I think that has to. No, quarter-final or final, I think is the answer to that one. But yes, as you say, that is a cracking game for the Six Nations next weekend on that one. Now, I'm going to go there. I know we shouldn't do, but hey, I'm going to take Moras's Bass's comment. Was it a good decision by New Zealand to ditch South Africa? Why was New Zealand bullied by the convicts in doing that decision? Right, number one, I don't think they were bullied by the convicts, put bluntly. At the moment, I don't think Australia has any sway or very little sway over what New Zealand Rugby chooses to do. So don't go down that route. Do I think it's the right decision? Yes, I do think it's a good decision, because Super Rugby was dead, folks. It was a zombie. It was walking dead. We all knew it was dead, and that old format. We're all waiting for it to die and just fall over. And it had to change. COVID came along and knocked it on the head for us, thankfully, because it just was not working. Why? There's all those sorts of things you can put in place and argue about whose fault and yada, yada, yada. But it just was not. It needed to change. It needed to go. I think rugby needs to be organised within time zones, so you're not playing games at 3 o'clock in the morning, because nutheads like me will get up for them, but most people won't. So you've got to play within your time zones. And so that means South Africa has to play with Europe, New Zealand, Australia need to play with the Pacific Islands and Japan, and Argentina needs to play with USA and Canada, Chile, Uruguay, etc. That's what will work. That's what will build fan bases. The old Super Rugby had its day. It was great when it was Super 12 all the way back. It was something new. There was a lot of excitement around it. But let's be honest, for the last 10 years, it had been on a pretty steep downward slide, with fans just saying, nah, thanks, and walking away. So yes, it was the right decision. Could it have been done more amicably? Probably, yes. But we're where we are, and I think we're where we should be. So yeah, that's me getting on my soapbox to finish the show, and I'll let Steve avoid all the horrible comments in his Twitter account by not having to comment on that one. At DrivingMaul is where you want to come and let me know if I'm wrong, because yeah, that's my opinion. I do agree with Simon, though. It is unfortunate and sorry that Argentina are left out of any decent international competitions for clubs. It's annoying that and they killed the America's Rugby Championships. I mean, they haven't got any international competitions really that they should be on. I know they're in the Rugby Championship, but I think that the America's Rugby Championship was fantastic. Unfortunately, that got killed. But anyway, there we go. Morris Burst comes back and says, "Okay, I hear your argument, but says it's hurting New Zealand young players." Very true. Look, one of the reasons New Zealand kept South Africa in the competition against Australia's wishes for years before that was because the tours to South Africa bred good All Blacks, and we'll have to see whether we lose that over the next year. As a player development platform, maybe Super Rugby is worse or not as strong as it was, but as a fan platform and something enjoyable to watch, I think it's much stronger than it was.
You know, Paul, I think South Africa are the sort of team that they bring a style of rugby that knows how to get under the skin of the All Blacks. And I think with a lot of the with a lot of the super sides, when they were consistently playing each other, Morrissey, I think it was good for the New Zealand players to come up against that sort of physicality. And if you kind of look at the tests from last year, boy, you've got to say South Africa just absolutely in both tests out-muscled the All Blacks. And it's not just the All Blacks that have, beg your pardon, the Springboks that have been out-muscling the All Blacks in recent times. Of course, both the Irish and the French achieved that feat as well. So that's something somewhere that they may pay the price in the future moving forward. And I still think it's important to have South Africa as part of the championship. I agree with everything Paul has actually said, but I think what also pretty much put an end to it was COVID, the MIQ rules in New Zealand, etc. I think just made things awkward more than anything else.
Oh yeah, the straw that broke the camel's back. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Stephen, for joining me. Thank you everyone here in the live chat who has joined me as well. Been a cracking week. Looking forward to this weekend in the Six Nations. Obviously, we talked about those games already briefly. As far as Super Rugby pre-season goes, we've got a midweek game on Thursday with the Rebels versus the Fiji and Drua. I don't know how we can, if or how you can watch that game. Also this weekend, the Crusaders versus the Hurricanes, maybe, but unlikely. I think the Highlanders versus Moana Pacifica. The Chiefs are due to play the Blues, and finally, that's all on Friday. And then finally on Saturday, Reds versus Waratahs. Again, I don't know how any of those games may or may not be available. At the moment, I don't know if any of those are going to be on Sky or whether it be streaming via Facebook or YouTube or whatever. Keep your eyes out. If you find out how you can watch those games, please let me know so I don't miss out on them as well. And I can then share it through my social media channels so that all those 5 people who follow me, no, a few more than that, get to see them all. But thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody. Join us next week, 8 p.m. On Monday for another hour-long chat around Super Rugby previews, Super Rugby pre-season, and also the Six Nations review.